Welcome to DSC 205. In this video, we'll look at some of the class materials on Dropbox and get started with some of the homework. Here is a picture of our text, and this is an electronic version on Kindle Reader. It's also nice to have a hard copy of this thing. Here it is. It's a little thick, but it's great to be able to flip through that book. And it's not terribly expensive. So let's look at the class folder, which I've shared with you. Notice the name of that folder, DSC Boofy. So this is a cross-listed course from Data Science and Computing and Business Finance, cross-listed. You will find the syllabus for the course. So all the sundry administrative details about me, how to contact me, the course description. We'll talk a bit about that when we get together and meet in person. I'll tell you more about our objectives for the course. All kinds of stuff about your grade, what you're going to be graded on, computers, etc. Okay? Blackboard, which we will use a little bit. So recall, as I said in the first video, which you should have watched, we will not be meeting on the first week of classes. I'm also going to be sending you out, or you will have received, a second email from me which describes a lot of these details, yet in another format, so that we'll be absolutely clear on what's going on. Here we have a homework schedule, which I'll be adding to. That's just a spreadsheet. So if you look in the Class 1 folder, there's a Word document, and it describes everything that we're going to do going forward before we meet, that I would really like you to get a handle on before we meet. So here's the first video we already that you will have seen. And these are two more videos that are just YouTube videos for basic Excel functionality. Even if you're very familiar with Excel, you're probably going to learn some new stuff in these videos. Basic functionality and also some tricks. Also, if you look here, it's a description of what you are responsible for the first class. We're going to have, there are some questions in Chapter 1 in our text, and then there are also some problems at the end of the chapter. And we'll go over those right now. I'll get you started with those. So first, I want to point out the homework schedule, which is in our shared folder. That will have all the assignments along with due dates. So I will populate this as we go. Now, notice that the due date for our first assignment is our first class meeting. So you should be well on your way to completing those by then, and if you have lingering remaining questions, we can clear those up in the first class, and then you'd have another at least till later that evening to complete them. Here are the videos that that I pointed out, also just another place to list them, and also other materials. So let's go and look at our problem. So here, this is the electronic version of the text here, and Chapter 1 is basic spreadsheet modeling. So all the chapters work like this. They have chapter questions, and then they show you how to do each of these, how to answer the questions. So we have answers to this chapter's questions. And then at the end of the chapter, there are more problems. Okay, so let's take a look. How can I efficiently determine each of my employees' weekly wages? There's something about bakery supplies, and then health club membership. So let's take a look at how we're going to do this. What's the question? Okay. Well, you have a spreadsheet with hours and what the wage for each worker is, and you want to compute their salary. So let's go and do that. So I've created template folders for these assignments. So again, in our shared folder, you're going to go to class 1. The class1.doc, you just saw, that is the sheet that details the assignment and other things. We were just looking at that. So the templates and data files. So notice I have one for questions and one for homeworks. So let's look at the one for questions. And all the problems, all the questions will have a template set up where you can, to kind of facilitate your answering the question. So each sheet here is for a different problem here. So the first sheet, notice I'm selecting on the bottom here. These are called sheets, and the entire spreadsheet is called a workbook. Again, you should look at those other 2 videos for a bit of an introduction on Excel if you've never used it. But suffice to say that here we have a template. Notice each cell, when I click on each of these, that's what's known as a cell. Again, those 2 YouTube videos explain all of these basics. And look over here, okay, hours and wages. Notice these are all in dollars, and that has to do with the formatting here. Again, that's all explained in those 2 YouTube videos. So we'd like to know how to compute the weekly salary. Okay, well, all I have to do is multiply the number of hours times the wage per hour. And let me increase the size here if you're having trouble seeing that. So 49 hours times $10 an hour, well, that's going to be $490, right? Well, we don't have to do that in our heads. To enter formulas in Excel, you select a cell and type equals. If you type equals, Excel knows you're going to be entering a formula. Okay, so what I want to do is multiply that guy, and I'll just click on it, and then I'm going to use the asterisk for multiply, and then I'm going to click on that cell, and then I just hit enter, and it does the computation. Now here's the neat thing about Excel or spreadsheets in general, is that they're designed to copy formulas or designed to manipulate data when it's laid out in tabular form like this. So if I click on the cell and then I mouse over the corner until I get a crosshairs, and then I click and drag down, it's going to automatically do the multiplications the way I want. So if I click on this cell, notice it's multiplying the 2 numbers I want, and there you go. So we've just answered the first question here. We might want to find the total. Now we want it to total, we're just going to sum these. Notice if I highlight the whole or select the entire column, a lot of information comes up down here. Tells me the sum, tells me the average. Okay. Now I'd like the sum to appear down here. So what I'm going to do is, again, highlight or select these cells, and then I can type equals sum, and then parentheses. I want to go from here, and then a colon, all the way to here. So colon means it's going to sum all the ones in between too, right? And we're done. Now here's an even slicker way to do a sum, because it's so commonly used. It's so common that you're going to want to do that. Let me kind of undo that. If I select these, if I come up here, now if I'm in the Home tab, so this is explained in those other 2 videos. You have different tabs up here, and then you have so-called ribbons and all kinds of things you can select. If you're in the Home tab and you come way over here, you see this sigma for sum, and that's this isn't actually going to do an auto sum. So let's get out of that. I don't need to select the drop down, but if I just select the sigma, and if I just click on it, Excel automatically knows what I'm trying to do, and it's going to do that for us. Okay, and we might want to do that with the hours too, right? It's probably no reason we'd want to sum up the average wage. That wouldn't be very meaningful. Okay, so for the average, there's a formula, an Excel formula called average. And you can see when you start typing, you can do the auto complete. So average of, we want the average of all of these guys, right? I'm just going to select all those, and there you go. So we're done with the first question. Let's look at another question. I'm going to do one more. How can I efficiently determine how much a bakery owes each supplier? Okay, now again, these are all explained in the chapter. Okay, so here's the second question, and it's going to explain how to do that. All right, but let's go take a look here. So this is the spreadsheet called suppliers, and if you look, you can kind of figure out what's going on here. You have various suppliers and their prices for different ingredients, and then you have quantities. So it looks like from supplier 1, we ordered 364 pounds of sugar, right? Units aren't given, but these are quantities. And the cost for the sugar was 32 cents, right, per pound. So in this case, for the total cost for the sugar, you're going to want equals. So I need to multiply the price from supplier 1 times the quantity of supplier 1, and that gives me how much I paid for sugar. So the cool thing here is that I can use this in those two videos. It's referred to as a formula handle. When you mouse over the corner of that formula, and now I'm going to click drag. See that? But now check this out. I can also click and drag this way too. And now what has that done for me? Excel knows that I want to multiply for this value here. It knows I want to multiply supplier 3 cost of butter, there it is, and then supplier 3 quantity of butter, and give me a price, or a total price. So that's pretty handy. And now look, you can actually do the auto sum on all of these. If I click auto sum, I'm not sure if it's going to auto sum on the bottom or on the side. Let's see. It did it on the bottom, which is what I wanted. Okay. If I wanted the total amount of sugar, butter, and the total costs here for supplier, so this would give us the total cost for supplier 1. I'm not going to be able to do the auto sum here, but what I will be able to do is just the individual auto sums. See that? And that now I can take this one and drag it down. Let's see why I'm getting these. Okay, so that's correct. I just need to give it a little bit more room here. Okay, done. Let's look at the third question, which I'm going to leave for you to do. How can I predict the number of customers a new health club will have in 10 years? The idea is that you start with 100. Each year you get 20 new customers, but then the churn rate, this is the percentage that quit. So 15%, so 0.15 times whatever you started with. Tell you what, I'll get you started with this. So your start customers in year 1 is just going to be 100, right? Well, you know what? I'm gonna let this equal this value here. So this way, if I do this, I can see what happens if I started with 1,000 customers, right? So having so-called parameters in separate cells and then referring to them allows you to change those values and check out different scenarios, right? So we could check out the scenario, what happens if we have more than 20 customers per year. Okay, so I'm going to leave that as it stands. And then for new customers, well, the new customers is also a constant, and we're going to select, we're going to use a formula and refer to the new customers. See that? Now that's different than if I just type 20 in this cell, right? Because if I type 20 in this cell, it won't change when I change this one if I wanted to. And now the quits are this churn rate times this value here. Okay. Now there's just one thing I want to adjust here. Eventually, I'm going to want to drag these formulas down like we did before. I'm going to want to click and drag these formulas down so I see what happens every year. But if I do that, this value here, when I in the next cell here, this value will refer to this value in the one below it. I don't want it to change. I want to lock it in there. So what you have to do is, so this is the cell C4. You need to lock, we want the row to lock. Okay, so worth noting that these cells are referred to by the column and row. So the column is C and the row is 4. That's why it's called C4. Very much worth noting. And I don't want the column to change. Or actually, the column's not going to change, but I don't want the row or the column to change. So what I will do is put a $sign in front of the column, and then I'll also put the column $sign in front of the row. So what that $sign does is it locks that in place so that when I drag this down like this, notice this formula still refers to the same C4. If I didn't have the $sign, what would happen? If I didn't have the $sign here, then what's it going to be referring to? It's going to, every time, so the first cell is going to refer to the churn rate that I want. The second one is going to refer to the one below it, which is I don't want, and then so on and so forth. This one's going to refer to this one, so that's no good. So we want to lock those cells. You know, it's often just convenient to lock both the row and the column. So again, and in this case, we do need to lock both row and column. So the $sign in front of the C locks the column. So if I drag this formula this way, it won't. Let's get that right. If I drag the formula to the right, it won't move this cell over here. It'll keep it locked right there. All right, so now the end customers is just going to be what you started with, which is that, minus, or actually plus the number of new customers, minus the number that quit. Okay? And now I'm going to leave the rest of this to you. We're going to get rid of these. So you're going to have to drag these formulas and see what happens. If I come now down to the cost to sheet, we were just on customers, and now we're on cost to. You'll see it's the same bakery situation, except now we have constant prices, so the suppliers don't have different prices. So this is a situation where you're going to have to lock your cell. Okay, so to get the sugar price, for example, from supplier 1, it's going to be the price of the sugar, right, times the amount, right? But since I'm going to want to drag these formulas down, I want to lock this cell E12, right? So I want to lock that price. in there. So I want to lock the cell value. So let's go ahead and put a $ in front of the E, so it locks the column. And then I'll also put a $ in front of the 12 to lock the row, because we're going to drag these formulas both down, and then when you drag it down, then you're going to drag it across, and it does it all in one shot like we did before. So the same kind of situation as with our customers example. Once you complete those questions, you're also going to want to complete the homework 1 problems, which are in the shared folder. The template is in the shared folder here. Template for those problems. The problems that the list of the problems is in our class 1 notes. Actually, that's not it. There it is. Okay, so do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5, and then there's also an additional problem, that x1, and those are all, the templates for those are all in this homework 1 problems spreadsheet, which has individual sheets for each of the problems you see down here. I'm selecting. This x1 is an additional one that's not in the text. So the actual questions for the problems are at the end of the chapter. So here we are in chapter 1. These are your problems. Okay.